Good morning students, welcome to the lecture 3 of engineering mechanics course. Today we are going to start from the same place where we stopped yesterday in yesterday class. So we will move on to next numerical, that is the numerical of friction and lecture 3. Yeah. So now let us move on to next question. So as you can see, this question came in IAS 2001. Right, so first we will read the question. The block shown in the given figure is kept in equilibrium and prevented from sliding down by applying a force of 500 Newton. The coefficient of friction is √3/5. The weight of the block would be that they are asking. Right, so how we are going to solve this question? So obviously first we are going to start with free body diagram. Right, so we have to take this block out of this system and we have to separately draw this block like this. Okay, now we have to draw all the forces, all the external forces which are acting to this block. Right, so we won't forget friction force. So first force is 500 Newton, that is being applied to the block so that block will not slide down this wedge. Right, so this 500 Newton force plus friction force, so these two forces together, they are not allowing this block to slide down. Right, and this block right now is in equilibrium. Right, it is not moving. Right, so friction will act in this direction. So what we did, because all the forces are vectors, so I just moved this friction, this vector from here to here. Right, I added it in 500 Newton, so we don't have to make it again. Now the another force is normal force. So this normal force, why this normal force is coming? Because there is a contact surface between slider, between this block and the wedge. Right, so this normal force will be perpendicular to the wedge. Right, okay, so again I think weight is given. The block shown in the given figure is kept in equilibrium. The weight of the block is, right, so weight only they are asking. So weight will act in downward direction and that will be equal to mg. M is the mass of the block, g is the gravitational force. So just after seeing this diagram itself, we will know that we are going to apply Lami's theorem or Sines law. Right, because we are having three forces. Right, and we have angle between them. So angle between normal and this force is 90 degree. Right, so this 90 degrees in front of W. Right, so first we will write W divided by sine 90. So we have to find out this 90 only, this W only. Right, this only we need to find out. Now we have this force 500 Newton plus Fr, friction. So what is friction force? So friction force is nothing but mu into N, the normal force between the block and the wedge. Right, so we will just substitute mu N in this equation. Right, 500 plus mu, and mu is the coefficient of friction, that is given is √3/5 divided by sine and the angle in front of this force, that is here. Right, so this is the force, this is the angle. So how much this angle will be? So we have to find out, we can easily find out this angle. We know this angle is 30 degree. So from here you can see, okay, this angle is 30, this angle will be 90 minus 30, this angle will become 30. Right, so this angle will become 30. Okay, so the angle between N and W will be sine 180 minus 30. Okay, is equal to normal force N divided by this angle. Right, this angle from here to here. So how much this angle will be? This is 90 plus 30. Right, Okay, so we got the equation from sine law, right? Now we have to solve this equation for W, right? So how we are going to solve it? So simply we will use first two, right? So W will be equal to sine 90 is 1, 500 plus mu is equal to root 3 by 5 and sine 30, because sine 180 minus 30 is equal to sine 30. So now in this equation we have to find out n, and how we are going to find out n? So n will be find out like we can use these two equations to find out n, right? So I will just rub it off this diagram. I will make it again. So n will be 500 plus mu n. Sine 30 is 1 by 2. N divided by sine 90 plus 30 is cos 30. So cos 30 is root 3 by 2. Okay, so from here we can find out n. N is equal to, directly I am going to solve it. This part, this will go into RHS. So n will come out common. Then what we will get? 1 by root 3 minus 1. 1 by root 3 minus 1. So what I did? I took this part to the RHS and then I took n common. And this 500 will come, right? So n will be equal to 1 by root 3 minus 1, right? Now we have to put this value of n here. Okay, when we are going to put this value here, then we can find out W, right? So simply I will just put value of n here. N is equal to 500 1 by root 3 minus 1. Okay. So when we are going to solve this equation, so just you have to do some mathematical just you have to apply some mathematics and you can find out the value of W here, and the value will come around 2500, right? So here we can see the solution is 2500 Newton here, right? So this will be the solution B. So for how to solve this, you have to use your calculator. I have already shared calculator that is being used in GATE. Online you check your Moodle, there you can find out the calculator, right? So you have to use only that calculator which we are going to use in GATE. Don't use normal calculator. Okay, so 2500 Newton. That will be our answer. Okay, so this question is over. Now we will move to next question, right? This was again easy question only, right? So normally where we are doing mistake while doing this mathematical solution, we are doing some mistake, right? So for that we need to do more practice. So for that reason only I have shared quiz in the Moodle account. You try to solve all the questions by yourself, right? Once you solve the question by yourself, then only you will be able to have that much of practice so that you can write GATE examination. Okay, now let us move to next question. So it is example 3.4. 3.3 I will be taking in the after some time. 3.3 will serve some purpose. So that's why I will take 3.3 after taking all the questions. So let us read the question. An automobile having a mass of 2000 kilogram cruises at a speed of 20 meter per second. If all the wheels are jammed, suddenly how far will the automobile skids before it comes to a halt? Assuming that the vehicle does not spin or topple, right? The coefficient of friction between the ground and the tire is 0.8. So what does it mean to say? We have this, suppose we are having this truck, this automobile, it is moving with some velocity and that is given 20 meter per second. Okay, so velocity is 20 meter per second. If all the wheels are jammed, now we are applying brake force. Okay, after applying brake, what will happen? This wheel, okay, this automobile will skid to some other position, right? So here we started applying brake, okay, at t is equal to 0 suppose, and at t is equal to t, this automobile will be stopped, right? So the coefficient of friction between the ground and the tire is 0.8. Okay, so we have to find out how far will the automobile skids. This distance from here to here, this distance only we need to find out. So from this question, the basic property of friction is that it is not a conservative force. So what happens whenever there is a friction, it will try to just remove the energy, right? It will try to change the energy into heat, right? Because friction, whenever friction happens, we get some heat. So what is happening here? When we apply brakes, this automobile will skid, right? And when it skid, there is a friction between surface and the automobile, right? And because of that friction, some energy will be lost, right? So we have to find out that energy, right? So how do we find out that energy? A simple basic formula of work done is W is equal to F into distance. F is the force acting over the body, S is the distance covered by the body, right? So what will be the force that will be applying on the body? So here after applying the brake, the brake is internal force, right? Because internally it is happening, but the external force will be friction force only, Fr. And this friction force is always constant. Why? Because our mu is constant. Mu is constant and n is constant. N is normal. So this friction force depends only upon friction coefficient and normal, right? So this F will become Fr, right? So W will be equal to friction force, that is equal to mu n into S, right? And this friction force, this energy or this work done by friction force will change into heat energy, right? So at this t is equal to 0 second, what will be the energy of the body, right? So body is moving with 20 meter per second velocity. Because of that, this body will have kinetic energy, right? And what is the formula of kinetic energy? Half mv square. So kinetic energy at t is equal to 0 will be equal to half mass of the block, mass of the automobile into 20 square, right? So this energy, this kinetic energy is going to change into work done by friction, and finally that friction work will change into heat, right? So both these things should be equal. Work done should be equal to kinetic energy at t is equal to 0, right? So work done will be from this point to this point. So at this point all the energy will be lost, right? Everything will be converted into heat, right? So now we will just make these two equations equal and we are going to find out S. Okay, so I will just remove this. I will just tell you what is the value of N. N is nothing but mg, because in this case normal is equal to weight of the body, right? And weight is given as 2000. Okay, 2000 into g. Okay, so now I will remove this. Okay, now let us solve this problem, this equation. So what is the value of mu? Mu is 0.8 into n. N is 2000 into, suppose g is 10. Normally we consider g as 10, right? Into S. Okay, is equal to half mv square. So m is 2000 into 20 square, right? So 2000 will go, right? S will be equal to so when you will solve it, 200, 10 is gone, 200 divided by 8, so how much you will get? So around 25 we will get, right? So 25 will be the answer, B. So right, correct, 25 meter. So the vehicle will move 25 meter away. So as soon as you will apply brake, after that it will move 25 meter, then it will stop. So that's why whenever we apply brake, we cannot stop the vehicle. So it is not a property of the vehicle, it is property of the surface and the vehicle contact, right? If your surface is smooth, maybe you are having BMW, it won't stop, right? If surface is having a lot of friction, you may have any type of vehicle and it will stop. So it will not depend upon the braking itself. It will depend upon your contact between automobile and the surface, right? So that is more important. Anyway, answer is 25 meter, right? So now let us move to next question. Yeah. A train of weight 200 into 10 to the power 5 Newton is running on horizontal track at a constant speed of 10 meter per second, overcoming a constant frictional force of 20 into 10 to the power 3 Newton. So here directly we have been given friction force. So we have not been given mu, that is the coefficient of friction. Directly they gave friction force. What is the power of the engine driving the train? So how do we solve this problem? So the formula of power is equal to obviously F into V, right? Force into velocity. So how it came? So I will just derive it in a simple method. Work done is equal to F dot ds, right? Power is dw by dt. Okay, work done per unit time. So d by dt. So if F is common, d by dt will go inside and we will get ds by dt. So this ds by dt will be equal to velocity. So from here it came, right? So the simple formula of power is force into velocity, right? So in this numerical, force is given, directly force is given, that is constant frictional force 20 into 10 to power 3 Newton, right? And what is the velocity? Constant speed of 10, right? Okay, so what will be the power? 2 into 10 to power 5, right? So that will be around 200 kilowatt. That is the answer. So sometime even in IAS they are asking very easy questions, but anyway you should be knowing constant frictional force. That is going to give the answer, right? So what happens, the basic concept behind this problem is that train is always moving, right? If some body, so Newton's first law we will know that if a body is moving in moving condition, right, then it should not stop if there is no external effect. Okay, so what may be the external effect? Air drag or friction force, right? Suppose if there is no friction, this body will always move with constant velocity. But if there is a friction, then you have to apply some force, you have to lose some of the power to compensate that friction, right? So internally you are going to apply some power to the wheels so that it will counter the friction, right? So this 2 into 10 to the power 5, that is the power, will compensate the friction. So it is just compensating the friction. Other things are happening. The train is moving because of Newton's first law, right? So it is not moving because of this power. Power is just compensating the friction force. The friction force that is acting here, right? Okay, so that is the basic concept behind this question. So that's why in IAS they are always asking conceptual questions, right? Okay, then let us move to next question now. So this is one very famous question, and it is I think last gate question only. So normally these type of questions takes a lot of time to solve, right? So we will know the short trick now. We will just find out one short trick. It is not a trick, it is actually conceptual trick that we are going to see, right? Okay, then let us read the question first. Two books of mass 1 kilogram each are kept on a table one over the other. The coefficient of friction on every pair of contacting surface is 0.3. Right. So what is 0.3? Here mu is equal to 0.3 contacting surface between 1 and 2. Here mu is equal to 0.3 contacting surface between 2 and our floor. Right. The lower book is pulled with a horizontal force of F, as you can see here. Right. The minimum value of F for which slip occurs between the two books. So whenever slip occurs, initially when you apply some force, what happens, as we know already, I will just revise it. So what happened initially? Initially, when you apply some force, here, the friction force will be equal to the applied force, right? But after threshold limit, the friction force will become constant, almost constant, and applied force, you can increase the applied force and the friction force will become constant and the mass will start moving, right? So same concept we are going to use here. Right. Okay, so first thing first, what we have to do, we have to make FBT. So what they are asking, minimum value of F, right? So first you make FBT of upper block. So this is the upper block, right? So what happens, whenever we are applying some force, there will be some friction between 1 and 2 and 2 and surface, right? So here only one contacting surface we have, right? So at this contacting surface, we will be having some friction force, right? So the whole point is that this block is going to be moved in this direction because of the friction that is being applied from 2 to 1, right? Friction force from 2 to 1. So 2, that is the block 2 is applying a friction force at 1 in positive x direction, right? So because of this friction force only, this block is going to move in forward direction, right? Suppose what happens, this friction force is acting in reverse direction. So what happens, this block will move in reverse direction. But in the question what they are saying, we just want to move these two blocks, and initially what happens, these two blocks will move only in x direction, right? And at the contacting surface, friction will be in this direction only, right? Because of this friction, this guy here, this block is going to move in positive x direction, right? So let us make free body diagram now. So first one is normal 1, we can say, right? Normal force. Other one is mg, weight of the book, and the final, that friction force, suppose it is also acting here, Fr, right? We can say it Fr1, right? So this is the free body diagram of the upper book. Now we have to make free body diagram of lower book. So this is 2, right? So what will happen? This friction is action force, or you can say it is a reaction. So this friction is being applied by second book to first book in forward direction. So what will happen? The first book will apply reverse friction, that will be action force in reverse direction, right? Fr1. So both the things Fr1 should be equal, and both are nothing but action and reaction force. This one is action force. So what happens? This block is applying some force to this block in reverse direction, minus x direction, right? And the magnitude of that will be same as this Fr1. So this is action, this is reaction, right? So because this block is moving in forward direction. So at this contact surface, again the friction will be applied in reverse direction. This will be Fr2. So what will be the value of Fr1? Mu into N1. N1 is equal to mg, right? Mu into N1. What will be Fr2? Mu into N2. And what is N2 here? N2 is a normal force acting between this contact area here, right? This total N2. Okay. So this total N2 will be equal to m1 plus m2 into g, means 2mg, right? So how this 2mg came? So let us see again. So the weight of the upper body is mg and lower body is mg. So total force in downward direction will be 2mg. So when you make equilibrium of forces in y direction, this is N2. So N2 will become equal to mg, right? So that's how N2 will become equal to 2mg. Okay. Okay, so now we will put the value mu mg is equal to mu into 2mg, right? So now what they are asking, minimum value of F for which slip occurs between the two books, right? So for the minimum value of F, what should happen at that point of time? This book should start moving. Okay, so at that point of time what happened? This force F, okay, will be just equal to total friction force. Okay, this force F will be just equal to total friction force acting at the second block, because we are applying force at the second block only, right? At the second book only. So total friction force at the second book will be is equal to Fr1 plus Fr2. If you add Fr1 with Fr2, you will get total friction force. So that I am going to do here, Fr1 plus Fr2. So what is Fr1? Mu mg. What is Fr2? Mu 2mg. So now what we have to find out, minimum value of F. So this will be the minimum value of F. Right. Okay then. Let us move to next slide. So in this slide, I have already solved the problem. Okay, after putting the values, suppose mu is 0.3. What is m? Mass 1 kilogram. What is g? 10. So around 9, answer will come around 9. So if you put g is equal to 9.8, it will be coming around 8.99. So it all depends upon the options you have. Suppose in the option 9 is given, right? And suppose we won't take this g as 10, we will take it as 9.8. So what answer we will get? So we will be getting around 8.82, right? So answer will be around 8.82 if you take 9.8. So suppose in the option 9 is also given, 8.82 is also given, then 8.82 is correct, right? If 8.82 is not given, then 9 is correct. So normally we consider this, consider that gravity is 10, but its exact value is 9.8. Okay, so 8.82 will be the answer. So now I will rub it off. So full solution is here, as you can see. For book 1, Fy is equal to 0. Sigma Fi means from here that thing came. N2 is equal to 2mg. From here only this came, right? Here you can see this one, right? Now force slip occurs between the books when F is greater than or equal to mu Rn1 plus mu Rn2. What is R? R is nothing but normal force, right? So when you solve it, you will get 8.83 around. Okay, so it is the detailed solution only, which I have already solved in previous slide. So now let us come to the example 3.3 that I left. So let us read the example first. A box rests in the rear of a truck moving with a deceleration of 2 meter. Okay, it is not a deceleration, it is deceleration. Okay, it is not acceleration, neither it is a deceleration, it is deceleration. So this spelling is wrong, right? So a box rests in the rear of a truck moving with a deceleration of 2 meter per second square. To prevent the box from sliding, the approximate value of static coefficient of friction between the box and the bed of the truck should be. So let us first make the diagram. Okay, then only we will understand. Suppose this is a truck. Okay, in this truck we have this box, right? And what is happening? This truck is decelerating. It is not accelerating, it is decelerating, right? So the acceleration will be in reverse direction, 2 meter per second square, right? So what is happening? It is moving in positive direction. Velocity is in positive direction, but acceleration is in negative direction. So acceleration in negative direction is called deceleration, right? So 2 meter per second square will be deceleration. To prevent the box from sliding, the approximate value of static coefficient of friction. So now here we are going to use a concept of D'Alembert principle or concept of virtual force. So virtual force will be our second. So virtual force will be our second next topic. So our lecture 4 will be only virtual force. That's why I am taking this problem at the last of lecture 3, so that we will have some knowledge of lecture 4 before really going into lecture 4, right? So what happens? So we are going to make free body diagram of this block first. Okay, because it is decelerating. Okay, the truck is slowing down. Okay, so what happens? Whole body is moving with v velocity. Okay, whole body, suppose this also is moving with v velocity. Both are moving with v velocity, and suppose we are going to stop it. So what happens? A reverse virtual force will act at this mass, right? So what is that virtual force? A reverse virtual force will be acting. Sorry, it is not reverse virtual force, reverse friction force. Okay, because it is static. Right now it is moving in positive direction and it is just getting stopped, right? So to stop it, a reverse force should act, that is friction force, right? So here between the contacting surface, at the contacting surface between this block and the truck, we have this friction, right, acting in reverse direction. So this friction is not acting in positive x direction. Okay, so suppose we had acceleration. If we had acceleration, then this friction force will be acting in positive direction. But we have deceleration, then this friction force will be acting in reverse direction. Because what we are going to do, we are going to trying to stop everything, right? Everything is going to be stopped after some time. Okay, so for that case, we have to stop this block also inside, right? Okay, so this is velocity. So as you can see here in this case, there is only one force is acting. Obviously other forces are mg and normal force, right? So right now it is in dynamic condition. Whole system is in dynamic condition, right? So what is happening? Everything is moving, right? And whenever some things are moving, whenever objects are moving, we cannot analyze it, right? Directly we cannot analyze it. What we just try to do now, we'll try to make everything, we'll try to assume everything static. Nothing is moving right now. Okay, we'll just try to assume that everything is static. Okay, and when you assume that, that time you are going to apply virtual force. Okay, so what happens? Because whole system is in dynamic condition, so what you are going to do, you are going to assume that to solve the problem, you are going to assume that whole system is in static condition. Okay, stopped somewhere. Okay, and then you are going to apply virtual force. Okay, so virtual force is the cost of assuming that this system is in static condition, right? So when we assume that this system is in static condition, that time what happens, virtual force will act, and the virtual force is always equal to inertia force. Inertia force, okay, with negative sign. Okay, so virtual force will always act in negative direction of acceleration. So you can see here the acceleration is in reverse direction. Obviously, because it is in reverse direction, it is deceleration. Okay, so virtual force will act in other direction, right? So here we have this virtual force Vf will be acting is equal to minus of inertia force. And what is the inertia force? From the second Newton's law, we can find that inertia force is nothing but mass into acceleration of the body, right? So inertia force is nothing but ma. So virtual force will be minus ma. A is the acceleration, okay, or deceleration, right? So you will just put in place of if, what is the mass? Right. Okay, so mass, suppose it is m only, m into a. A is acceleration, that is equal to 2. Okay, that is virtual force. So now we will analyze this problem. Okay, so what we are going to do, this is virtual force. We will make equilibrium condition in x direction. Okay, sigma f x is equal to 0. Okay, because we are assuming that everything is static, right? So in static means everything is in equilibrium condition. In that case, sigma fx is equal to 0, right? So there are two forces acting. One is frictional force, that is acting in reverse direction. Friction force is acting in minus x direction. So we will put minus Fr, and inertia force acting in positive direction, that will be equal to okay, because it is acting in positive direction, it will come positive here, right? This A is deceleration. So whenever you are going to put value of A, it will be minus 2, right? So it will be minus 2, minus minus will become plus, then you will get plus m into 2, right? So this A is acceleration, but now we are having deceleration, that's why we are going to put minus, and this minus sign is because of property of virtual force. Okay, virtual force is acting in reverse of inertia force, right? So friction force is equal to m into 2. So what is friction? Mu mg, right? So from here mass will go out and you will get mu as 2 by g. So that will be the answer. So if you assume that g is 10, then you will get 0.2. So 0.2 will be the answer. Okay. So after doing this numerical, we understood that what is virtual force. So now we are going to go in detail in virtual force, right? Okay. So that is our next chapter. But before going into virtual force and virtual work and D'Alembert principle, we have to understand some more basic concept of mechanics, which are centroid, center of mass, and linear moment of inertia and all those things. So first we will cover up the basics, right? Then we will directly jump into virtual work and D'Alembert principle. Okay, then I will just rub it off. Okay. So before just going into virtual force, we are going to see this. So we have finished our chapter 3, right? Now we are moving toward chapter 4. In between chapter 3 and chapter 4, we have this topic we have to understand, right? So first and second, moment of area. So moment of area is more important in engineering mechanics because most of the times we are having cross section area, right? So in bending also we have cross section area, and wherever we are doing in fluid mechanics also we are going to use a lot of cross section area, right? So in those cases we have to apply these equations, right? First and second moment of areas, right? So first we will understand what is center of gravity. So center of gravity is the point where the resultant gravitational force W acts. So suppose we are having this mass here, okay, it is 3D mass, okay, and at each point of this mass gravitational force is acting, right? At this point G is acting, at this point G is acting, all the points G is acting, right? Now where we will assume that, suppose we are going to assume that this whole mass is concentrated on one point somewhere here, right? Okay, and at this point we can assume that total weight is acting, total gravity is acting. So this point is called center of gravity, right? Where the point where the resultant gravitational force W acts, right? So I will just explain all these things in little hurry, then we'll move to virtual work. What is center of mass? The point where the total mass of the object is visually concentrated. So what is the meaning of visually? So in center of gravity, you are showing only this path, right? Suppose it is my palm and I can make it static in equilibrium at this point, right? Okay, but the center of gravity will pass through this point, okay? Suppose this whole thing is a point of center of gravity, right? Okay, because you can make this palm static, okay, if you put this pen here, but in center of mass will be inside, okay, center of mass will be inside the mass, okay. Suppose center of gravity will be having one axis, you have to just balance this, what we call object, okay, here, and it will be balanced, right? But center of mass will be inside, okay, center of mass will be inside the body, right? Where you can assume this body is acting, here there is no action of gravity, we don't care about gravity here, right? We just assume that it is the center point of the body, right? So the point where the total mass of the object is visually concentrated, okay. So for center of gravity you are having this formula where you are going to use weight, because gravity is there, right? Weight is mg. For center of mass you are going to use only dm, okay, only mass of the body, okay. So integration of rw divided by integration of dw. So dw is nothing but total weight of the body, right? And dm is nothing but total mass of the body, right? Center of volume, so same way the point where the total volume of the object is visually concentrated. So suppose we are having this object and here density is more and here density is less. So center of mass will depend upon that. Center of mass will depend upon the density of the object, right? So based on that, suppose center of mass is coming here, but center of volume will not depend upon that. Even center of gravity also depends upon the density, right? But center of volume, it will never ever depends upon what is inside. It will never ever depends upon the density variation inside. It will only depend upon the volume. Where is that volume? So wherever this whole volume will be assumed to be concentrated will be called center of volume. And how do we find it? With this formula. R center of volume will be equal to integration of r dv divided by total volume, right? Okay, so it is the theoretical part, okay. So you have to understand what is the difference between all these terms, and you have to understand this whether you are able to speak it or not, but you should be able to understand what is the difference between center of gravity, center of mass and center of volume. In GATE exam they are not going to ask the definition, right? What they are going to ask, numericals, right? And you have to solve it whether you are going to apply this one or this one. It depends upon, right? It depends upon your own understanding, right? Whether you can make it in words or not, it doesn't matter, right? Centroid. Centroid is nothing but another name of CV, center of volume, right? So another name of the CV, center of volume, is the centroid. It is purely geometric shape property of the body. Center of volume is also the geometric shape. It is not depending upon the density. Same way centroid, right? So centroid of a line, suppose we have this line here. The centroid of this line will be the midpoint. Okay. Centroid of area, suppose it is a rectangle. So where will be centroid? Wherever these two diagonals will meet, cross section, right? The centroid of volume, already we studied. Centroid of volume is nothing but CV. Okay. Suppose we are having a complex body. Okay. Suppose we are having this body. Okay. And we have to find out the centroid of whole body. Then how we are going to find out? First we are going to consider one reference plane. Okay, then we are going to find out individual, suppose this section and this section, individual centroid. Okay, we will assume that whole area is concentrated over this. A1 is concentrated over this point, A2 is concentrated over the point here, A3. So these points are nothing but individual centroid of this section only, not whole. Okay, now suppose this distance is so this is A1, A2 and A3. Suppose from here to here it is R1, from here to here it is R2, from here to here it is R3. So how you are going to find out centroid of the complex body? Okay, so here you can assume either A1 area or mass also. In place of A1 you can put mass also. Okay, so you are going to apply this formula. So right now I am going to find out only xi, right? Y and z will follow the same, right? Same procedure. Okay, in y case you have to assume another coordinate axis, that will be y, and from here you have to find out the distance. Okay, so that I am not going to do. I am not going to solve anything, just I am explaining, right? So now how we will find out x bar? So here you may take mass also, there won't be any problem. In place of A1 you can take M1, R1 plus A2 R2 plus A3 R3 divided by total area. Okay, total area means, right? So in place of area you can take mass also, right? M1 R1 M2 R2 M3 R3 divided by total mass. But here I have taken only lamina, okay, only plates type of things, that's why I am taking only area, right? Okay, then it is a part of theory only. So now we are having area moment of inertia, right? So I think you all know about what is area moment of inertia, because we are constantly using it in fluid mechanics, strength of material, sometime in dynamics also. Everywhere we are using area moment of inertia. Let me explain it again. What is area moment of inertia? So area moment of inertia is nothing but second moment of area, right? This second one. Okay. So area moment of inertia is nothing but second moment of area. What is the meaning of moment? So already I told you, moment means, suppose we have this point and a force is acting here. So in place of this force we can have anything, right? Any vector, right? So the force into the distance, perpendicular distance, will be the moment. Okay, moment, right? So in area moment of inertia, in place of force what will come? First moment of inertia. Okay, first moment of inertia is nothing but x bar into r, right? Or in place of x bar you can write x dA or y dA into x itself, right? X will go inside, it will become x square dA, right? Or in place of dA, dm will also come, then it will become mass moment of inertia. Right now it is a area moment of inertia. What will be the mass moment of inertia? dm. If mass will come, it will become mass moment of inertia, but normally we are using only area moment of inertia, right? So that's how it is, right? So geometrical area moment of inertia, again it is a geometrical property of an area which reflects how its points are distributed with regard to an arbitrary axis, right, with regard to y and x. Okay, so Ix will be equal to y square dA. So it is nothing but same y dA, right. So you will take y inside, it will become y square dA, right. So applying these two formulas, you can find out area moment of inertia of any area. Okay. So this is Ix. So area moment of inertia always depend upon the axis. So about this axis, area moment of inertia will be y square dA. So y is the distance, okay, from all the points. That's why we are doing integration, right. These are the y, a variable quantity, right. So from here, Iy is equal to x square dA. So what is this area moment of inertia from the reference line of y? So again, these are the x coordinate and the area, so x squared dA, right. This will be the area moment of inertia about y direction, okay. So now let us move to next. So in area moment of inertia, we are having some theorem, that is first one is parallel axis theorem and second one is perpendicular axis theorem, right. So what is parallel axis theorem? Suppose we want to find out area moment of inertia of this rectangle, okay. So we know already that area moment of inertia of this rectangle about this CG, center of gravity, is Ix, okay, Ixc. What is the meaning of C here? Centroid, okay. And but we want to find out area moment of inertia about this point, this line. So what we are going to do? We are going to apply this formula here, right. So where Ixc is area moment of inertia about the centroidal axis, A is the area of the lamina or area, okay, and D is distance between them. So just after, if you apply this formula, you can find out Ix1, okay. So this will be Ix1, right. So that is parallel axis theorem. Second one is perpendicular axis theorem, polar moment of inertia. So in perpendicular axis theorem, what happens? It is called polar moment of inertia also, and where we are using it? In torsion, right. And normally in torsion we are using polar moment of inertia, right. Suppose again we have this rectangle and we are having this axis here that is coming out of the board, right. We want to find out area moment of inertia about this axis, right, that is coming out of the board. So what we are going to do? First we will find out area moment of inertia about this centroidal axis in x direction. Then we will find out area moment of inertia about this centroidal axis, which is Iyc, okay. So these two axes should be always perpendicular, okay. So once you found out Iyc and Ixc, you can simply add them, okay. Then you will find out Izc. Z is nothing but this Z axis. In that way, how you can find out polar moment of inertia, okay. Now let us see what is radius of gyration also. So radius of gyration is nothing, normally the formula of any inertia is r square a, right. As you can see in previous case, y square dA, right. So y square dA can be written as r square a also, right, if everything is constant, right. So r square a, so this r will be I by a under root, and this r will be called kx, that is radius of gyration of that particular object, right. So this is radius of gyration in x direction, and radius of gyration for y direction will be ky is equal to Iy by a under root. So radius of gyration you are going to use in strength of material only. So there you are going to again study what is radius of gyration and many things. In flywheel also we are using radius of gyration in dynamics of machine, right. In engineering mechanics we don't need that much. We just know what is the basics, right. Okay, for a composite body, how we are going to find out any moment of inertia? Simply in that way, you will suppose we are having this body and we want to find out moment of inertia of not moment of inertia, area moment of inertia of this body about this axis O dash, right? So what you are going to do, first you are going to find out moment of inertia of this body. Okay, only first you will find out area of what we call area moment of inertia of 1, then you will find out area moment of inertia of 2, then you will find out area moment of inertia of 3 about the same axis, then you will just simply add them and you will find out this. So total I will be I1 plus I2 plus I3. So this I suppose it is in x direction, so it will be Ix, I1x, I2x, I3x. Iy will be in that case, okay, for x you will take this reference point, reference line. For y you will take this reference line. Okay, this is for y and this is for x. So about it you will get Ix, about this you will get Iy. Okay, so that's how we can find out for a composite body. So normally in GATE they are asking questions from this topic only, right? They are not going to ask questions from previous topics. Only these topics only they are going to ask questions, right? So that's why we are going to solve one numerical, and actually I did this numerical wrong when I wrote this GATE exam. So in the GATE exam, I think you know already, nowadays instead of giving options A, B, C, D, in some questions you have to type answer. Okay, you have to just type answer with the help of your keyboard, right? Suppose answer is 323.46, then you have to type after the 2 decimal points, right? So I did mistake in decimal points and I got negative marking. Actually there is no negative marking for these questions, but I could not correct it, right? So I corrected all the tough questions, but finally what happens, I incorrected this question in which I have to find out simple moment of inertia, right? So that's how our calculation should be very good. Okay. So sometime everything is good, even then you do mistakes. So sometime it depends upon the luck also, right? Because after decimal point, if you do some mistake and then also they won't assume it correct, then what can we do, right? So this is the example which I did incorrect. Okay. So the figure shows cross sectional of a beam subjected to bending. Okay. The area moment of inertia, so here we have area moment of inertia in millimeter to the power 4 of this cross section about its base is that we have to find out and we have to type, right? There will be a typing place in the computer itself and you have to type the value, right? So this question I did wrong, something I did wrong, right? It was very easy question. So we have to find out area moment of inertia about the base, about this line. So about this line we have to find out I. So how we will proceed? So after seeing this problem, first we need to find out that which area of moment of area inertia will be very easy, right? So first thing first, what you will do, you will find out moment of inertia of this rectangle which is having 10 by 8, 10 by 10. So it is not a rectangle, it is a square, right? So first we have to find out area moment of inertia of this square. After that we can minus area moment of inertia of these two what we call hemicircle, right? So this is hemicircle, this is hemicircle. What you can do, you take this hemicircle here, right? You take this hemicircle together and together it will become a full circle, right? Okay. So moment of area, what we call the area moment of inertia. So the area moment of inertia of this rectangle minus area moment of inertia of this circle of r is equal to 4 will be equal to area moment of inertia of the object itself, the area itself, right? So that is the way we can solve it. So we are just applying nothing but the same thing, this thing, area moment of inertia for composite body here, right? So by using parallel axis theorem, area moment of inertia about its base will be like this. Okay. So first we'll find out area moment of inertia of this rectangle. So I will just, you have to mug up, you have to remember a lot of area moment of inertia also, right? So what happens in GATE examination, you cannot directly, always derive area moment of inertia. So for the basic object like, rectangle, square and circle, you should be always remembering what is the area moment of inertia, right? And what is more important, to remember area moment of inertia of all these normal objects about their centroidal axis. Okay. Because if you know the centroidal axis, then you can easily find out area moment of inertia of this body about any axis, right? So about the centroidal axis, the area moment of inertia of this rectangle is, I just mugged up, okay, BD cube by 12. So I think you must be using it everywhere around, like in design transmission of system, strength of material and fluid mechanics, you are using the same formula, right, multiple times. So it is about the central line, right? But we have to find out about the base. So we have to add AR square. Area of this lamina is 10 into 10 multiplied by this distance 5 square. Okay, so that's what it is. 10 into 10 cube by 12. The value of B is 10, value of D is 10, because we are having a square here of 10 by 10 sides. 10 into 10 cube by 12 plus 10 into 10, the area of the cube square, into 5 square, that is the difference between, that is the distance between from this point to this point, right? So this is the thing, right? Okay, so now we have to minus, so now we need to minus area moment of inertia of this circle about this axis, right? So suppose we know area moment of inertia of this circle about centroidal axis, right? So what is the area moment of inertia of this circle about the centroid? That will be, I will write simply, for circle about the centroid, it will be around pi by 64 d square. D is the, not d square, d to the power 4. So what is d? D is nothing but diameter of this circle. Okay, so IC is equal to pi by 64 into d4. Okay, so that is about centroidal axis, but we have to find out about this axis, right? So what we will do? Plus AR square, right? So what is the area? Pi r square, right? Area of the circle is pi r square into r square, right? So this r is nothing but difference thing. This r is the difference between this line and this line. Okay, so area will be, I will write it in numerical form, pi d square by 2, right? Pi d square by 4 into distance r square, r is nothing but 5, d is 8, right? So pi into 8 square by 4, or you can simply write pi into 4 square. So this is the thing here, right? So when you will solve it, we will find out this answer, and you have to write the answer correct up to these 2 decimal, right? So what happens when I did this question wrong in GATE, after that I thought I will never attempt the questions which will be such lengthy questions, right? Because there is a chance of doing, incorrect, right? So I don't want to incorrect these questions, right? So what I started thinking that we should solve these type of problems at the end of the exam. Once you are done with all the easy questions, then you can try these type of questions. So conceptual question we can try. Okay, conceptual questions, normally conceptual questions will be easy one, in which you don't have to do more calculation. But in the question like this, where you don't have to apply any concept, it is like, very easy thing. So we have find out the area moment of inertia of the rectangle about the base, right? Now we need to find out area moment of inertia of this circle. Okay, so we have to find out area moment of inertia of this circle about this axis, right? So obviously first we should know area moment of inertia of the circle about the centroidal axis. So what is the area moment of inertia of the circle about the centroidal axis will be I is equal to pi d4 by 64. I think that you already remember, because we are using this in design of transmission system, strength of material and fluid mechanics. Everywhere we are using it, right? So it is about the centroidal axis plus, suppose this is r, right, and the area of the circle is a plus ar square, right, from parallel axis theorem, right. So a will be pi d4 by 60, pi d4 by pi d square by 4 into the distance r square. Okay. So what is d? D is equal to 8. That is the diameter of circle. Okay. So d we will put 8, and what is r? R is the distance from this centroidal axis to the base axis, right. So r is equal to 5. Okay. So after putting all the values, you can find out the answer, right. So first you have to find out expression for this, then you have to find out expression for this, right. Then you have to solve them, and then only you can find out the answer. And you have to make this question correct up to 2 decimal points, right. So normally what I would do, I am solving these type of problems at the end of the question paper, right. Why I am solving these type of questions at the end of the question paper? Why? Because there is a chance, if you solve it in between, there is a chance that you can do some mistake in calculation, right. If you are not doing any mistake in calculation, if you are very good, then you can solve these type of questions. But you are very prone to do mistakes in calculation, then you try these type of problems at the end, just 30 minutes before the gate examination. Okay. So I did mistake in this question because I was weak in calculation, right. So let us move to next topic. So these type of many questions are going to be giving. So I will give you all these questions, many questions in quiz form in Moodle. Try to solve them, right. So next topic, okay, simply just we will know what is the area moment of inertia. Area moment of inertia is a property of a shape that is used to predict deflection, bending and stress. So obviously where we are using area moment of inertia, bending, that is strength of material, stress, that is strength of material, deflection is a stress of material, right. Plus we are using this area moment of inertia in fluid mechanics also, right. Polar moment of inertia we are using in torsion. So as a measure of a beam's ability to resist torsion, which is required to calculate the twist of a beam subjected to the torque, right. So in that way also we can define area moment of inertia and polar moment of inertia based on the application, right. So simple moment of inertia is a measure of an object's resistance to the change in rotation direction. Why rotation direction? Because wherever you see moment, okay, moment, what happens? We will assume one reference point, one force is acting or any vector is acting, distance between them, so movement will be equal to r into f, right. So same way here, wherever movement will come, this rotation thing will come, right. Okay. Now let us move to virtual work and D'Alembert's principle. So we use D'Alembert principle in kinematics of machine and dynamics of machine, right. So normally we use D'Alembert principle in dynamics of machine, okay, but here we are going to use virtual work, okay, and I will tell you how to find out D'Alembert's principle with virtual work, right. From the basic concept of virtual work, how to find out D'Alembert principles expression, that I will going to tell you. So both are related, right. So what is virtual work? So virtual work is the principle of a virtual work states that the sum of the incremental virtual works done by all external forces Fi acting in a conjunction with virtual displacement Si of the point on which the associated force is acting is 0. So in simple language I will tell you, suppose, okay, leave this one, we will just make a structure, a type of truss, right. Okay, so this truss is in equilibrium, okay, and you want to find out forces or something, okay, somewhere you want to find out force with the help of virtual work, okay. Suppose one force is acting here and two reactions are here, RA and RB. So what you are going to do here, you will assume that there is some displacement because of this force, right. Obviously there is no displacement, right, we can see, but in the concept of virtual work, what you assume that there is little displacement, okay, and when you find out the work, because of that little elemental displacement, it should come 0, right, because in reality what is happening, nothing is moving. This point is not moving, this point is not moving, and this point is not moving, no point is moving. But when you apply principle of virtual work, you just assume that it has just moved very little distance, dx, very little distance it has just moved, right. Same way you will just assume that all the points has moved very little distance, okay. When they are moving a little distance, with the help of F dot ds, force into displacement, you can find out the work done by them, okay. But in actuality nothing is moving, so work done by them should be equal to 0. So this concept we are using to find out a lot of things. In strength of material, very famously, we are using Castillo theorem to find out deflection, right. So that theorem is very very easy theorem, right. But if you know the concept of virtual work, then only you can apply that theorem to find out deflection, right, in strength of material. Here also we are going to use virtual work to find out some expression. I will be solving one numerical for that. So what is the virtual work? Obviously dW is equal to F1 S1 plus F2 S2, wherever forces are acting, F3 S3 and so on. So wherever in a structure external forces are acting, we will take, so these S1 is nothing, very small, ds1, ds2 and ds3, very elemental displacement, and we will add all of them and we will make it equal to 0. So what you will get an extra equation from that, which you can use to solve the numericals, solve the problems, right. Okay, so now we are going to derive D'Alembert's principle from virtual work. Okay, so what happens during D'Alembert principle when we solve the numerical, okay, just some time before, a body is moving with the acceleration, okay. So in that numerical what was happening, a block was inside and this drug was decelerating, right, in the previous numerical which we solved. So we found out inertia force minus ma, right. So this body is moving with some acceleration and there was an inertia force over this body, right, I, right. So D'Alembert's principle is just the principle of virtual work with the inertial forces added to the list of forces that do work. So here you can see we are using F1 F2 F1 S1 plus F2 S2 plus F3 S3 or so on. All these forces are external forces, okay. In that frame all the forces which are acting externally, okay, over the boundary, right. Suppose if we add Fi, that is the inertia force that we did in previous question, with displacement Si, okay, and then make it 0, then this thing will become D'Alembert principle, right. From here we can find out D'Alembert principle. Okay, so this is the D'Alembert principle, okay. So in simple language, what is D'Alembert principle? Sum of the forces acting in the body plus inertia force will be equal to 0. So we are going to apply virtual work during equilibrium, right, and we are going to apply D'Alembert's principle when the system is in dynamic motion. When the system is moving, that time only we are going to apply D'Alembert principle, right. So that is the basic difference between virtual work and D'Alembert principle. So whenever we are applying D'Alembert principle, we will assume that the body that is moving with some acceleration is static, right. It is just static, it is not moving anywhere, and when you are making it static, when you are assuming that the body is static, that time you are going to apply reverse inertial force. That is this, right. Reverse inertial force you are going to apply, and the addition of all these things will be equal to 0, right. So this is the simple definition of D'Alembert principle, just addition of all the external forces plus inertia force equal to 0, right. Okay, then let us move to next topic. Now let us move to next question. So this question is again last GATE 2013 question. So it was the first time I wrote GATE and I got around 305 rank. But this question was the question which decided that whether I will get a job through GATE or not. So if you get in that time, during that time, if you are getting rank under 250, you will be easily getting the job, right? You will be getting around direct recruitment in BHEL and BL and many other companies. But I got out of 300 rank. So I think this question was the main issue there. I did this question wrong and I got negative mark. So this was a 2-mark question. So I did it. I put a wrong answer. So 2 by 3. So I lost around 2 plus 2 by 3 marks. So suppose had I not even tried this question, I would be having more 2 by 3 marks. I had marks like 6.33 in GATE. This is 0.67, right? So I had marks around 63.33, right? So I would be getting 64. In that case, my rank would be under 250, right? So if I get a rank under 250, I would be easily getting any job in PSU. So that was the deal breaker, as you can see. This question was the deal breaker for me in GATE 2013, which I did wrong. But afterwards, I learned the D.Lambert principle properly and I tried to solve this question again. So let us solve this problem. A pin joint uniform rigid rod of weight W. So this rod is having weight W and length L is supported horizontally by an external force F, right, as shown in figure below. The force F is suddenly removed. Okay, so what we are doing, initially it is simply supported and after that we are just removing this support. At the instant of force removal, the magnitude of vertical reaction developed at the support is. So what they are asking, magnitude of vertical reaction at this point R, when we don't have this F, right? Just after that, whenever we remove this force F, that time itself we have to find out this reaction. Okay, so what I did mistake, I thought because when we will remove this F instantly, this will start falling down freely. Okay, that I thought and I put 0 as answer, but that was wrong. Here we have to apply D.Lambert principle. Why? Because when you remove the support, at that time what will happen? This system will become dynamic. Okay, and whenever we have a dynamic system, we have to use D.Lambert principle. There is no other way, right, to solve the question fast other than D.Lambert way, right? So let us solve it now with the help of D.Lambert principle. So first thing what will happen, we are going to remove the F, right? We will make a free body diagram of this. Okay, this is a pin joint so that it can rotate, right? Okay, this is the bar and we don't have force F. It is T is equal to 0 second. So what will happen? Suppose the weight is W, right? If weight is W, because of this W, a movement will act over this body. Okay, so this body is nothing but a rod. So a movement that will be equal to W into L by T will act. Okay, so the movement will be W into L by 2. So because of this moment, this rod will get some angular acceleration, right? So D.Lambert principle we can apply in the case of force as well as in the case of torque or movement or any other rotational force, right? So what will happen? Because of this movement, this bar, it will start moving down, right? It will start rotating about this point, right, at T is equal to 0 second itself. So because of that, angular inertia will happen. Okay, what is the angular inertia? So simple inertia is ma. Simple inertia of any body which is moving with a acceleration is ma. Suppose a body is rotating with alpha angular acceleration, then I alpha will be the angular inertia, right? So what will happen? It will develop inertia. When we remove the force, this rod will develop inertia. Okay, and this expression will be followed, right? I alpha, whatever inertia it is developing, that will be because of the weight of the body, right, into L by 2. That will create a movement, right, about 0.0, right? So from here we can easily find out alpha. So what is this I? This I is moment of inertia of this rod about this point O. IO. You can say it IO, right? So alpha will become into L divided by 2 into I naught. Okay. So this will be the first equation. I will write it separately there. What will be the alpha? Alpha will be equal to W is the weight into L by 2 into I naught. I naught is moment of inertia. So here it is a mass moment of inertia, right? So because a mass is moving, so mass moment of inertia of the rod about the point O. This point is O. So now I will rub it off and I will try to solve this question. So from that previous section we found out alpha, right? Now we have to apply D'Alembert principle to solve this, right? How we are going to do it? Again I will make the free body diagram. Okay, this time the free body diagram I will be making after assuming that this rod is not moving. So whenever we try to apply D'Alembert principle, we assume that the rod is not moving, it is static, but what it will cost, what extra thing we need to add? Reverse inertia force and reverse inertia movement. Okay, so we have to add reverse inertia force and reverse inertia movement here. Okay, in reverse direction. So inertia is in clockwise direction, so we will add reverse inertia movement I alpha. Okay, and reverse inertial force MA. Because of these things only, because of these two things, we can assume that now it is static, now it is not moving, right? Other than MA, mg will be also acting, right? That is the weight. Okay, so this, why I am taking this acceleration at t is equal to 0. What happens at that instant? This point will develop some acceleration, right? And this body will develop one angular acceleration, right? So we have to consider both of these things here, right? So now how we are going to solve it? So now it is very easy, right? You have to just take moment about point, this point itself, B. Okay, if you take moment about this point, okay, so here also in free body diagram we have to put reaction, right? If you take moment about the point B itself, what will happen? mg, ma both are passing through this point, right? So the moment because of these two things will become 0, right? So just take moment about this point m about the point B, right? So what it will be? First r into L by 2. From here to here it is L by 2, right? So the direction will be clockwise, so you can put minus here, right? Then I alpha, that is counterclockwise, right? And the moment because of ma and mg will be 0, because ma into 0, mg into 0. 0 is the distance from the line of action of forces, right, from the point B. Okay, so this should be equal to 0 because we have assumed that we are applying D'Alembert principle and everything is in static, right? Now this I, what is this I? This I is nothing but moment of inertia of this rod about this point B, because we are taking moment about the point B, right? Okay, so because we are taking the moment about point B, so this I will become IB. Okay, so now we have to solve, we have to find out directly R from here. So R will be equal to IB alpha into 2 divided by L, right? Okay, so this we will find. This is the reaction R at the pin joint P, right? So we are only taking vertical reaction. We are not taking Rx. Why we are not taking Rx? Because when you will calculate moment about the point B, what will happen? This Rx, line of action of Rx will pass through the point B, right? And they are asking only vertical reaction here, right? So that also you have to take in consideration. Okay, now we got two formulas, alpha and R is equal to 2 IB alpha divided by L, right? Okay, so I will just rub it off. Now we just have to solve the problem. We don't need all these diagrams. With the help of these two things we can solve it, right? So what we have to do, we have to replace alpha here. Okay. So alpha r is equal to 2 into IB divided by L into W into L 2IO, right? So IB is about this point B, moment of inertia of the rod about this point B, IO is about this point O, right? So L will be cut down, 2 will be cut down, right? So what you are going to get? IB by I naught, okay, into W, right? What is W? mg. So now what is IB? So value of IB will be, let me tell you what is the value of IB. So all these things you have to remember. So I naught is ml square by 3, right? I naught is ml square by 3 and IB will be, let me check, ml square by 12, right? So IB will be ml square by 12, I naught will be ml square by 3. So in the gate examination you have to remember at least ml square by 12. If you remember ml square by 12, you can find out ml square by 3 by using parallel axis theorem into W, right? 3 will cut by 4, m is gone, L square is gone, right? You get W by 4. So that was the answer. Okay. So that's what it is. So this is the typical question, the toughest question you can get in dynamic force analysis, right? Some more problems you can find out that I will be sharing with you in quiz, right, on this dynamic problem, right? Try to understand this, try to solve it yourself. Obviously you have to think a lot when you are applying D'Alembert principle, but if you have practice then you don't have to think always that much. Right now I don't even care about concept because I have practice, right? Because I am having practice now, so I don't even care about, even concept now, right? So you need more practice to solve D'Alembert principle numericals, right? So now let us move to next question. Okay, so that was the solution. So next question is on virtual work, right? So most of the question on virtual work you will be getting in strength of material, right? That will be a Castiglione theorem that you are going to apply to find out deflection, but now I will be telling you how to apply virtual work question here, right? Determine the, so this is the question, and I will just read out the question. Determine the force P required to keep the two rods in equilibrium. These are the two rods and we have to find out this P force, right? When the angle theta is equal to 30 degree, right, and weight W is 50 pound. This weight W is having 50 pound. The rods are each of length L, right? AB is of length L, BC is of length L, theta is 30, right? And rods are not having any what we call weight. Okay, normally in truss we don't consider AB weights, right? We think that all the trusses are weightless. So they are prevented from moving out of the plane of the figure by supports not shown, right? Okay. So how do we solve it? First, obviously we have to draw the free body diagram. Okay. So here you can see free body diagram at this point. free body diagram at this point and free body diagram at this point, right? So at this point already we have one force W. At this point, because it is simply supported, okay, here there is a normal, so one normal force will act, but we are applying one force P also, so N and P both will be acting. This point there will be two reactions, one from this surface and one from this surface, N2, okay, that you can see here, okay. So one will be here N, one will be P, then one will be here Cx in x direction, Cy in y direction, right? So in virtual work, what we do normally, we will assume that everything is in equilibrium. So what we will do, we will just assume that this truss is moving, right? Even though it is not moving, but we have to assume that it is moving with some distance or some angle. So wherever forces are acting, there we have to assume that it is moving. So at this point we cannot assume. Why? Because this point is having two things here, so it will not move anywhere, right? Only these 2 points we can assume that these 2 points are moving, and we are going to find out work done because of W, N and P, right? So obviously from N we cannot find any work done. Why? Because this point is not moving in y direction. So this point is, if it is moving in y direction, then only we can find out work done because of normal force. But this point is moving in x direction, right? So this point is moving in x direction. That's why we can find out work done because of the force P. And this point is moving in y direction downward, B, right? So we can find out work done by W, right? And the combination of these two work dones will be equal to 0, right? Okay, so draw FBD and identify the active forces, those forces that would do work if were increased slightly, right? Okay, if were increased slightly, okay, if you just increase the work done very little, then it will move a little bit, right? Free body diagram, the dashed line shows the position of the system after theta has been increased a small amount or has been decreased, okay, has been increased or decreased a small amount. The force W does work because point B moves up, okay, so point B is moving up, right? So W is an active force. The force P does work as point A moves to the right, so P is in active force. So that's what I told you, only P and W are active force because they are only doing work. They have some option to do work, right? And Cy, Cx, they don't have any point because this point is moving only in x direction, not in y direction, and this point is moving only in it is not moving, right? So that's why the reaction Cx and Cy do not work because point C does not move anywhere. Thus Cx and Cy are not active force, okay. The normal force N does not work because it is perpendicular to the displacement of a point A. Thus N is not an active force. So what is the definition of work done? F into ds. So both the things should be in same direction, displacement as well as force, right? So P and the displacement in x direction. Okay, so let us move to next. So introduce coordinate measured from a fixed point C in the figure to the point of the application of active force. Okay, so we will just assume from here we can say that it is y axis and this is x axis, just showing the coordinate axis, right? Now we have to apply virtual work theorem, right? So what will be virtual work? So virtual work I will just simply write here VW. So when we are going to take positive work and when we are going to take negative work, okay, that we are going to decide based on the direction of movement and direction of the force, right? So in the previous case, as you can see, so in previous case here you can see that we are assuming that this thing is moving like this. Under the force P, this thing is moving down, point A is coming inwards, so point B will come up, right? But force is in reverse direction. Force is in W is in downward direction, but point B is moving in reverse direction. In that case, the work done by W will be equal to minus whatever distance is delta y we can assume into W weight, right? Same here. So this we are going to see. Okay, so here you can see minus P delta XA minus W delta YB, right? So delta U is the total work done is equal to 0. So minus P delta XA minus W delta YB should be equal to 0. So what I think here, what they have assumed coordinate axis as y positive direction and x in this direction positive, right? If you assume in this way, then only this minus sign will come, right? So what is happening? X is happening in this direction, P is also happening in same direction, but because X is happening in positive X direction, but in our coordinate system we assumed toward left will be positive X direction, right? So that's what they are changing. Point C in the figure to the point. Okay. So introduce coordinate method. So that type of coordinate they have assumed at point C, right? So we found this equation. That will be equal to 0. Anyway, it doesn't matter. You can assume coordinate in any direction. This minus sign will change. Finally, answer you will get it will be having extra minus sign. Okay. Okay, though just we'll solve this problem. Okay, so now what we need to find out? We need to find out the distance covered by both the points, point B and point A, right? So how do we find out distance covered by point B? So YB is L sin theta. L is distance from A to B and this angle is theta. So A to this point will be L cos theta and B to this point will be L sin theta, right? So this whole thing will be L sin theta, right? L sin theta. So if you do dy by dy, okay, you just differentiate YB dy by anything d theta suppose, right? You can find L cos theta d theta by d theta. So in that case you can find out dy in the terms of cos theta d theta, right? So dy come here and dx will come here, right? Okay, so here you can see what we need to find out. Delta YB. So delta YB is nothing but dy. Delta XA, it is nothing but dx, right? So that's what we are finding out. So YB is equal to L sin theta, so delta YB is equal to L cos theta del theta. XA, movement of this point in x direction, will be 2L cos theta. So how we found out 2L cos theta? From here to here, the total distance XA will be equal to 2L sin theta. So L cos theta, not sin theta, cos theta. So L cos theta in positive x direction and L cos theta from here also. So both will be combined 2L cos theta. So XA is equal to 2L cos theta. You just d by d theta you do, then you will find out minus 2L sin theta d theta, right? Now you will put these two values in the equation before here. Okay. In place of delta XA you will put minus 2L sin theta d theta, that is here. Okay. In place of delta YB you put L cos theta d theta here, right? When you will put all these things, okay, and then when you will solve it, okay, so minus 2p sin theta minus w cos theta L delta theta, we have just put the values, okay. Okay, so this will come to zero, go to 0 in RHS, and you will be left with this equation, and from this equation substituting the given values theta is equal to theta and W is equal to 50 pounds, you will find out P is equal to 43.3 pound, right? So that's how we are finishing today lecture 4 virtual work, right? So okay, so now we are finishing lecture 4 virtual work with this question, right? In next class we are going to see motion in the planes and we are going to cover that. Okay, thank you all.